Today we're going to talk about additional theorists in early childhood education. There are so many theorists that have advanced our field that it would be impossible to talk about all of them, but we're going to talk about a few of them today. So Kohlberg was a theorist that talked about morality development. So this is something that's not talked about too much within our field, but Kohlberg kind of came up with a chart of how he thought people develop their morality and stages. So he said that there were 3 stages. There's the pre-conventional stage, which is the obedience and self-interest. So you do anything to avoid being punished. And your joy is in pleasing others. So this would be younger ages. The next would be preschool and school age, would be conformity and law and order. So these are the rules. This is what I have to do. There's no getting around it. Everything is very black and white when you talk about conformity and law and order. There's no gray issue. There's no gray areas where you can bend the rules. And then post-conventional would be what is actually morally right or wrong. This is where you can have that higher level thinking about an example would be a scientist comes up with a life-saving drug, and a man has a wife that is in need of the drug, but he doesn't have the money. He's tried working as hard as he can and he can't save up the money, and he goes and asks them to please sell it to him cheaper or take a payment plan, and they say nope. So his wife is going to die without that medication, and so he breaks in and steals it. Is that morally right or wrong? He saved a life, which is, some might say would be morally right, but he stole. So that's where where you can actually have conversations about what is morally right. So some people never get past the black and white thinking and go into that higher level of thinking. One of the interesting things about Kohlberg stages is that they line up very well with Piaget's stages and the pre-operational concrete, that kind of thing. Another theorist is Brenner. So Brenner came up with the ecological theory of development. And this is where he says that a child has a system that they live in. And the microsystem is their most immediate environment, their family, friends, teachers, home. The mesosystem is actually the interactions between those in the microsystem. So teachers and family, do they get along? Do the parents like the friends, or are they constantly complaining about them? That would change their mesosystem. The exosystem are people or places that don't directly interact or impact the child or interact with the child, but they do have an impact on the child. So this might be a parent's workplace. The parent hates their job and they come home cranky. The exosystem would be a cranky parent because of their job. And then the largest system is the macro system, and this is the most distant system to a child. And this would include their culture, their economic or political systems. One could argue too that your macro system could be considered in your microsystem in some of children's lives. And then a chronosystem is a dimension in time. So it's changes that happen in a child's life that are really big changes that might affect their development. So a divorce, birth of a sibling, a parent loses a job, a war. The Me Too movement had a great impact on some families, as well as the new Black Lives Matter and what's happening within our system right now, our lives with the racial uprising. That is what the Bronfenbrenner's ecological system theory looks like. Again, the child in the middle, and then the rings going outwards. Skinner is somebody that you probably have talked about if you've taken any sort of psychology class. His is really about behaviors and changing behaviors. So you either he says that there's operant conditioning, and that's trying to change behaviors through either reinforcements or punishments. And we see that a lot in early or in school age classrooms. If a teacher has a behavior chart and the child pulls a red card, that is a negative reinforcement. So it is saying, you're going to get in trouble if you do something wrong. And then, of course, if the teacher says, if everyone's good, then we will have an ice cream party on Friday, that would be a positive reinforcement. So it's either a praise or reward. So what he says is positive and negative punishments will discourage behavior. Howard Gardner, excuse me, is a theorist that talks about multiple intelligences, 7 ways, and he actually now has 9 ways that people understand the world. So linguistic would be reading or speaking. Logical mathematic is if somebody's really good with numbers and deductive reasoning. Visual spatial, this is actually able to mentally visualize spatial awareness. I realized that this is not one of my strengths when I was trying to put together train tracks for my 2-year-old daughter, and I could not figure out how they went. And my husband would have to do it every time, and he could do it in 2 minutes. Kinesthetic is how children move. So if a child likes to be active while they're learning, those are the children that have a hard time staying in their seats. Children that are musical, sometimes if you play music, some children really absorb the material better if they have background music on. And then there's interpersonal and intrapersonal. So interpersonal is when people like to work with other people, and then intrapersonal is when they like to work on their own. Maslow came up with a chart on the hierarchy of needs. And what he says is that our psychological needs down here need to be met. The psychological needs need to be met of the child. They need to be fed, not tired, and they need to be safe. And then they can move up on that on this scale there. So if you have a child that comes to class and their parents fought all night and they were screaming at each other, the police had to come, the mother or father had to spend the night in jail, they didn't get dinner, and they go to school the next day, they're going to have a very hard time concentrating on math or learning anything new because they are in a fight or flight. They are worried about their parents. They are hungry, and they're not going to be able to learn the information. So those are a few of the theorists in this week, and this is our assignment for this week, is to create a bumper sticker, and all of the information is on in Canvas.